today. I was considering all the events that happen in the world. Makes one think about what to talk about when it comes to a Dharma talk, especially. And it's always exciting for us to give talks, especially when there's major events, and we keep having major events happen in the world today, especially the last few months, as we all know. But as a Buddhist, it makes us work a little bit harder to somewhat decipher what's happening outside and somehow connect it with what's happening within. Because the world around us is notorious and very skillful at allowing us to kind of deviate, because there's so much. It's a lot more interesting. It's so noisy, the world outside, with the events. It's so compelling that we easily drift into the world, seep out of what's happening here, and try to put a dent, our own signature, on the world around us, hopefully by changing it to the better. So as I was going over these thoughts, I came across a segment from the Majjhima Nikaya, the middle-length discourses from the Nikayas. And this is one of the recent publications by Wisdom, and it's by Bhikkhu Bodhi. It's called The Buddha's Teachings on Social and Communal Harmony. It's a recent one. I think it's 2017. But just to quickly go over some of the things which I saw, I was like, you know, this could be something that just what the doctor ordered. Pun intended. Practicing effacement. The Blessed One said, "Now Chunda, here effacement should be practiced by you." And in case some of us might not be clear on the word effacement, Bhikkhu Bodhi uses this word. I mean, it's not that often used. However, think of it as eroding, weathering away, being filed off, basically disappearing. So one should practice effacement thus. Others will inflict harm. We shall not inflict harm here. Effacement should be practiced thus. Others will destroy life. We shall abstain from the destruction of life here. Effacement should be practiced thus. Others will take what is not given. We shall abstain from taking what is not given here. Effacement should be practiced thus. Others will speak falsehood. We shall abstain from false speech. Others will indulge in idle chatter. We shall abstain from idle chatter. Others will be restless. We shall not be restless here. Others will be of wrong knowledge. We shall be of right knowledge here. Others will have no fear of wrongdoing. We shall be afraid of wrongdoing here. Others will be unmindful. We shall be mindful here. Others will adhere to their own views, hold on to them tenaciously, and relinquish them with difficulty. We shall not adhere to our own views or hold on to them tenaciously, but shall relinquish them easily. Effacement should be practiced thus. One of the things, by the way, this one is from Majjhima Nikaya number 8. One of the key concepts or principles that we come across in the Nikayas is the importance of, within this practice, the importance of abstaining from argumentation. Turn on any radio station, Sirius, whatever, turn on any channel. Everybody's trying to put their voice out there to try to argue a point or two or three. It seems that we can't run away from it. And the last time I checked, the conversation that goes on between our ears is all about that anyhow. We're constantly arguing, debating, coming up with justifications as to how this is supposed to be, or why is this happening. These things have to be changed, these things have to not be so. I've constantly talked about the defilements, the 3 poisons, the things that have to be avoided within this practice, that the Buddha constantly goes back to. And some people might think of the defilements, oh, not again. How can we really avoid being confronted by them? As we meditate, as we go deeper and deeper into understanding our thoughts, it's inevitable for us to also come across the underlying connection, the ground upon which most of our thoughts actually thrive and grow. Craving is one of them. Aversion is the other. And delusion is the mother of all. So as I was thinking, okay, our president recently pulled us out of the Paris Accord. Being a Buddhist, you know, we all think about the interconnectedness of all things. When you look at Paticcasamuppada, the dependent causal relations, you see that we are all connected. Everything is connected. It's not just about some abstract ideas or notions that the principles come to play. When we look at a tree, when we look at how, for example, in Sri Lanka, the last set of numbers that I've seen as to how many deaths have occurred, they were over 200. I was in Sri Lanka. Some of the places that I visited, they were underwater. When I was there, it wasn't obviously like that. It's a beautiful country. How could that not be affected by how we are treating the environment? So I noticed how it was easily pulling me out and try to somehow put that set of sentiments, those sentiments out there, and see what is really causing me to feel that state of uncomfortableness, that state of undesirable state. I don't like to be in this world, a world that is disrespecting Mother Earth. Because essentially what we are doing by taking away from the earth and abusing the earth, what we're doing is basically breaking our precepts. I don't own the future. As an entity, as a human being living now, I don't own the future. So by me pulling out a tree, chopping it down, and not planting 10 in its place, is basically stealing. So I am breaking the second precept, essentially. And how is that not related with my practice, therefore? So as I was thinking about this, I noticed how, you know, activism starts within us. To be able to start that resistance to break through the status quo has to start with our own personal endeavors. But it's so hard. It's so hard because it's so easy. I can just point the finger at someone out there and say, that is ignorance. And as I was a little bit curious, it's just like, where is that coming from? And then I remembered something. Going back to our childhood, we think about TVs, you know, the units, the tube, etc. And I remember the first time I actually saw what a TV was like. I was like, oh, there's stuff playing in front. Oh, how is that? There must be those tiny mini versions of him living inside this box. I was like, oh, I was so excited, but at the same time, I was like, I remember, I would go ahead and sometimes even smell the wood on the side of the TV. It's like, I must be hearing them when the TV is turned off. I must be, maybe they're asleep. The characters, you know, Lucy, she must be asleep somewhere. And one time, I think we had like, it broke down. It wasn't working, and my dad had to open the back of it and try to fix the TV. And I was afraid. And when my dad went to the kitchen or somewhere, I saw that as my opportunity to go in and look to see where their beds are, their kitchens, and I looked, and I was horrified to find none of those things. I saw transistors, things that looked weird, to things like, there was some dust, obviously, and I was like, what is this? I was shocked. And then, in a way, deep down, I wanted my dad to quickly put the backing, screw that thing on again and get it fixed, obviously, so I can pull away from my curiosity and go back into my delusional state of just looking at them and seeing Lucy just like I wanted to see her, or just watch whatever, back in the days, tells you how old I am, I guess. Heckle and Jekyll animation, I used to love that. It was black and white TV, so. And Tom and Jerry, all these things. And I started to lose that sense of curiosity in wondering what was in. I just accepted the fact that the screen is what interested me now. I didn't care about what's behind it. I just accepted it. Now, how is that related with our own feelings, our own thoughts, our own experience of life? If we want to understand the quality of our thoughts and where they're really coming from, the underlying defilements, etc., one of the best telltale signs are actually found within this thing called feelings. And feelings manifest within the body beautifully, constantly. As we're becoming more and more aware and mindful of our own thoughts, usually the way the body moves, like if we were studying the Satipatthana, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, we start with the body, usually in the form of a breath, etc. But as we're becoming more and more aware, we start noticing the tiniest little sensations that are happening in the body. Ooh, I have my belt too tight, or my shoes are too tight, yeah, or this chair is not comfortable, etc. So slowly we start getting in contact with these things called feelings. Now, the feelings that we're talking about are perfect ambassadors of our thoughts. It's so wondrous sometimes to feel this loftiness of having a higher perspective on life than our leaders, our social, whatever, political, you name it, or our neighbor. Somebody who disagrees with us, they have a totally different perspective on life. It's so easy to point at them and saying, you know what, that's completely passé. It's ignorance. It's how could you live with yourself thinking like that? So I need to become an activist and make a big whatever shot of you, Photoshop you, whatever, and just try to convince you, push you out of that state of ignorance, which in many cases every one of us would agree with under current circumstances. Okay. But I became curious as to where I'm coming from in wanting, desperately trying to get this person, this group of people, to relinquish their ideologies. And I saw that I want to live in a cozy, comfortable, pleasant, safe world. That's what I'm trying to do. I want to make the world more habitable, comfortable for me. And for people who think like me, which is another indication that they also match where I am at, that's why they're like me, because I like them. Okay, what is that? One of my teachers, he's in Malaysia, Venerable Punnaji, he says, humanity has convinced itself that the purpose of life is simply the constant pursuit for pleasant experiences, more and more and more of it, on a daily basis until we die, and by the same token, the ever-increasing, or in this case, decreasing opportunities for unpleasant experiences to take place. So basically, more of the pleasant, very little of the unpleasant. So no painful for me, thank you, more pleasant for me. Who doesn't want that? So, looking at the whole situation that has been, that's been going on for the past few months, I was like looking at the situation, just like ignorance, ignorance, ignorance. I need to change, I need to change, I need to change. And then I saw that there's this sense of aversion within me, wanting to have things be different. See, the mind is so wondrous. Lucy is playing constantly on that too. There's always some show that the mind is pulling off, convincing us that no, the attention has to go here, outside of us. It's more exciting. You can change that. You have enough people behind you, enough effort, enough force, you can change the world. I am coming to terms with an understanding that it's really difficult, if not impossible, to do anything, because we are looking for permanency. We are looking for a state of permanent comfort in changing the world. Now, does that mean that we need to stay away from changing the world or wanting to see it different? Absolutely not. What my effort in today's talk is to try to kind of change our focus to start from here. Start from here. Because it's so easy. Death could happen any moment, and we are ignoring that. Society is moving our gaze away from the immediacy of this present moment and how valuable it is to be born as a human being. All the traditions of Buddhism talks about this. They talk about this all the time. And unless we are at a point where we're extremely ill, or something happens all of a sudden and let's say you're riding this beautiful motorcycle and you're going at over 100 miles an hour and you're making these turns and it's wonderful, this and that, and boom, you hit the wall. All that in a flash, gone. Youth, this, that, whatever, gone. Opportunities gone, wasted, gone. You might have been at the forefront of some of the most meaningful, life-changing, humanity-promoting marches ever in human history. Means nothing at that moment. It's gone. Your life has been waste. As far as this practice goes. Generations after you might say, no, he was or she was an incredible person. Yes, fine. But as far as your experiential purpose in life is concerned, and what this life has given you and I, it's gone, it's wasted. And that's where the principle of samvega in Pali terms, of the sense of urgency comes in. Most of us are living in a state of constant worry. When the Buddha talked about the first noble truth, calling it dukkha, many generations ever since, they've been talking, what's so noble about suffering? It's not the suffering that's noble. It's the realization of it. Finally it kicks in. Finally we understand that, oh boy, The reason why I was riding that motorcycle at that speed, this and that, I worked my whole life to obtain it, this and that, was because I was running away from something. What's really plaguing me is not this person at the top who's destroying society, this and that. It's here. We're living at the most narcissistic. Our society today, around the world, has become incredibly narcissistic. See, when you look at Erikson's stages of life, or even Freud's, or Piaget, when you're studying human development, you see these very distinct ages that we go through to develop out of. It's called human development, right? And there are stages, infancy and on, and teenage years, etc., where we are trying to identify our own selves, sexuality, identity, ego. And you look around you and you see people, in their middle ages or whatever, they're just like looking, taking selfies. Being so concerned about what other people think of themselves, we've come to a point of we've spent our lives going outside of the eye of the hurricane, outward into the farthest wings of it, as we have relinquished our responsibility to live our own lives for the sake of changing the world around us. And how does that make even sense? Any sense? And then the moment comes and we die. And we have people who come and they tap us on the shoulder and they say, yes, good job, good job. But that big hole, this big voidness in the center of our lives is still unfillable. So these are some of the thoughts that I was thinking of this past few weeks. I made some notes which I never seem to go over, but any questions so far before? How are we time, Monty? Oh, we're good. All right. Any questions so far? Okay. All right. So basically, it's easy to fight an enemy outside of us. If you take anything today with you as you walk away from the temple, if you could just go over that. And one of the biggest things that we ignore is, the Buddha always said, everything is burning. Everything is burning. I was like, when I first heard this being mentioned by my teachers, I was like, what is he talking about? Everything is burning. And then I looked into it. It's craving. He's talking about craving. And what's another name for craving? We talk about lust or craving, wanting something. Well, it is the same thing when you look at it. It's the same thing as aversion. In order for me to want something so badly, I need to be pushing myself away from something that I hate so badly. So I might be wanting to change the world around me, but at the cost of losing my tranquility of mind, which is what this path is all about. See, we forget that the world around us is going to keep on going. Let's say if we all, I'm going to take liberties here, if we all perished just right now, the world is just going to continue. Go figure, it's just going to continue. I mean, it's done that for the past, at least this planet, for the past 4.6 billion years, I think. It will continue. One of the greatest gifts that this existence has brought forth is the ability for human beings to be able to observe and become aware of their own existence. molecular biologists, evolutionary biologists, sociologists, psychologists, everybody's amazed at that. If there's any magic, that should be it. To come to realize that, wow, we're able to become aware of ourselves. And it's uncomfortable for many of us because it's so easy to get caught up in on what the TV is offering us, right? It's the easiest thing. You can just veg out in front of a TV, binging and this and that, and that's, you know, we do that. So in a sense, what I'm talking about is, I guess, in honor of the Paris Accords. I was thinking of today's talk being ecology of mind. And I remember one time I was watching a documentary, or maybe it was a movie, but it was about inmates who have lifelong sentences, maybe a few sentences to go through. And the faces, one of the faces of one of the inmates, like you look at the face, is just like so relaxed, so serene. And the person who was interviewing them said, "Wow, you're not going to get out. Basically, you're there. You're going to die there. They're going to, you know, pull you out in the stretcher." And he was like, for him, it didn't really matter at all. He was like, "Look at the bird. Look at the bird over there flying." He was not avoiding the question at all. But he was living truly in a state of freedom. Now, I've spoken with individuals who are extremely financially secure, I mean, stable, incredible wealth, houses, this and that, whatever many people might be craving, let's say, many people. And on their faces you have this sense of cringed, I mean, there's so many frowns, so many wrinkled up, and they're not that old, let's say, physically. These people are under so much stress. And they're free. They could travel anywhere on their own private jet. Okay. Please tell me the difference between that individual and the inmate who is sentenced forever. So that brings us back to the way that the person is processing and cultivating and maintaining that ecology of mind, going back to that state of tranquility. Because it's, you know, we've heard this so many times, happiness is a choice. We can make the choice of going ahead and coming up with millions and millions of worrisome thoughts to keep playing and bouncing like an Atari game, you know, just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth between the ears, which completely devastates a person's the quality of life and fills up the schedules of therapists. I've heard of people who actually been to psychoanalysis in New York like for over 26, 27 years. It's like, and the person is still, like, they complain, they're still there. That is a fortune. Psychoanalysis is the most expensive, as far as I know, types of therapy. And it's like, really? So what about the choice? The choices we make are extremely important. So what I'm saying is, before we go ahead and be so involved in activism, and we need to, and we should, before we do that, or while we're doing that, always go ahead and check the quality of mind, please. Are the defilements there? Chances are they're there, but at some level, you know, what are they in a gross state? Almost tangible? Am I hating this person for being different? Or am I thinking of, you know what, I have compassion for you. I understand that. You have your own narrative, whatever it is, because both of us are looking for acceptance. Both of us are looking for a sense of, you know, it's okay for you to be you, and I'm going to accept you the way you are. Sense. Ask Any world leader, any ask Hitler, Stalin, all these guys, they at one point where you actually were able to kind of catch them in between vicious acts, there were moments, because they're still human, there were moments where they were really authentically themselves and completely vulnerable. The camouflage of other things, they were not completely able to cover that up. And we all have those moments, and what I'm asking for is for us to go looking for those. Be curious enough to look inside the TV of our thoughts, because we have such incredible belief of acceptance of our thoughts. I'm having that thought, so therefore it must be true, and I will not even question that, and I'm just going to go ahead outside of myself to try to change the world as I see it. Pointing the finger out away from us is the easiest thing. It's a piece of cake. Anyone can do that. Doesn't take courage. Doesn't take heroic ability to do that. There's been fights against, this group of people, that group of people. Today's minority, whatever they may be, tomorrow may become the majority. And when they do become the majority, guess how they will treat the others? Because you cannot become a majority without somebody else, another group, becoming a minority, right? It's relative. So it's very interesting how human beings we behave. Many of the minorities once were minorities, today they're not minorities. So where does that, is it permanent? And that mindset of I have to fight for that? Okay. It's very interesting because with professors and other therapists, I sit down, sometimes we have debates, or I wouldn't say arguments, but I like to throw that wrench in there every once in a while to kind of shake, rattle the boat a little bit, but let's go deeper into that. Is it true? And you can sense it on their faces when it becomes uncomfortable, because now you're forcing them to peek into the back of the TV. Because it's so comfortable to sit in front of the TV and watch what's happening. It's the easiest thing. And if we're all able to kind of, we have to sit in front of the TV, and what I'm trying to say is, it doesn't hurt. In fact, it's beneficial, fruitful for us to go and peek in every once in a while. Still sit there in front of the TV and watch it. But know that there's nobody living in the back, but still be curious. I hope that's kind of resonating with you guys. Any questions? Bante, we have time, right, for questions?
Yeah.
Yes, Russell.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for your talk.
Mm-hmm.
It's a privilege to come here and listen. Now, the thing is, I think, my question is it sort of like, which is, how would you say it? I think I would prefer aversion over perversion. And I believe that, things that are happening in the government they are basically perverted, because they are actually stopping people from, giving them the chances to even, they don't have time to meditate. They don't have time to do certain things because, they're so oppressed. So I think that we have to make a choice between aversion, even though, I know it still, sort of reflects a craving to be comfortable, but not only for me, but of course I like to be comfortable, but for other people too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, when you see that a system is perverted, then basically the perversion is, I think it's justified.
Thank you for sharing your sentiments and your thoughts. No, it's valid. It's the narrative that is in millions of people's minds. I mean, it's not, thank you for sharing that and make it audible for us here. As you were sharing your thoughts, I was thinking of this incident that happened between Actually, it's. I was thinking of a different scenario, but if you watch the movie Seven Samurai, and one of the classics of cinema, and the samurai group of samurai that are being, rallied together to go and fight an oppressive system. They're watching two individuals. One of them is a samurai, and the other one is, I think, well, maybe, but he's kind of like very agitated, passionate, and he already has drawn his sword. The other samurai is standing there so still, so quiet, observing. It's one of the best movie scenes in my mind ever that I've come across. And then that serene looking samurai is not moving, still, like a rock. The other one is screaming, yelling this and that, and he starts running at the other samurai. And one of the bystanding older samurais, he just shakes his head and he starts turning his gaze. And the other ones are like, why are you turning around? Like, this is the most important. This is the action. It's about to happen. It's like, it's already lost. I mean, what a poor waste of, quality. He already knew the outcome. So it's very easy for any one of us to become so justified, and that's exactly what I was after. The mind is the most sneakiest things out there in the universe. If not, yeah, it is the sneakiest as far as I've come across mechanisms in the universe. It's that, because it can convince you of anything, so long it's able to divert your attention from looking at Russell. Now, you are able and qualified to go ahead and point out the errors in the other person's perversion. And I'm with you on that. However, can you do so with a clear mind? Can you do so with a heart full of empathy? Now, an empathetic person does not mean you're blind to what's happening around you. That's where the heroic aspect of our nature comes out. And that's what a warrior is. And to my understanding, of course. So I hope that kind of, in some way, addressed your...
I think the samurai example is good, yeah.
Okay, yes. Yeah, we have more.
There's something about Buddhism that feels so self-centered. To me, like, even when we're talking about changing the world, let's go look at ourselves. How do you? I don't know if seeking balance between the two is the right approach, or if I'm thinking about it incorrectly. But it just seems so self-centered. Like my upbringing, Western religion is other-centered. To be unselfish, you don't think of yourself first. You put other people first. You try to help change the world. Blah blah blah. But with Buddhism, it always comes back to, I don't know, like, a building is burning. Let's go save people. Let me check my.
Wow. That's.
I mean, placebos, but that's what it's.
I
get sense sometimes, and if you can speak to that.
Yeah. Just quick, I'm going to try to give him the time. There's a saying in the Dhammapada where the Buddha says, you can fight 1,000 armies and win over those 1,000 armies 1,000 times over. That's nothing compared to a person who's able to control one's own senses. Now, if I'm going out of my mind, if somebody says, oh, my pet is in there, in the building that's on fire, or my baby's in there, I can just jump in and burn myself to death, okay, in an attempt to save this child or this animal. Okay, that's one, which obviously is not going to result in anything fruitful. Or I can pause, collect my thoughts and ideas and how to approach, and then take the wisest route into jumping in and saving that being. Buddhism is the second. So many people have died trying to jump in after a drowning person because they didn't think. The instinct was there, the intention was there, which is beautiful. However, you also have to understand what is the wisest, skillful way. Buddhism is only self-centered as far as, this is again to my understanding, as far as bringing it all into focus. I'm wearing my own glasses. Yours are different than mine. Over the weekend, actually, we were at a gathering of therapists, and after the luncheon and the session and all that, it was a very relaxed time, so there was a pond, and there were canoes. I'm not realizing that I'm 6'5". I thought that I can just step on one and just quickly sit in there. Guess what? Bad decision. I flipped over and I fell into the pond. Fortunately, I had given my phone to a friend of mine on deck. Guess what? As a Buddhist, it was a perfect opportunity because technically the old person, the old Chandana, might have just been flipped out. There's like 20 of them standing on there. Oh my God, what are they going to think? This and that. It's embarrassing. I started laughing. I was all drenched. And guess what? I lost these guys. They're very expensive because, you know, whatever prescription it is. Life did not seem the same, visually speaking, because I didn't have mine. Glasses. So as far as Buddhism being self-centered, it's working on clearing up your lenses. That's the way I see it. How can I actually go ahead and look for my loved ones if I can't see them? How can I go into the burning building and save anyone, let alone myself, putting myself in harm's way? So it's the easiest thing, again, to want to be so altruistic, this and that, and unthinkingly, without calculating things, want to go and change the world. That's what the objective was in this talk. Again, before you do, that's very lofty, it's beautiful. But coming back to here, making a change. Yeah.
Chandana, if I could add something to that.
Yeah, please.
I posted a meme
Kusala.
today.